Hello and welcome back to the Electronic Intifada's live stream for Thursday, February 12th. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Nora Barrows-Friedman with my colleagues Ali Abunimah, Jon Elmer, Asa Stanley, and Tamara Nassar. It's day 860 of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Coming up, we speak to tech worker Alex Mitov about how he decided to resign from the major technology corporation Dell over its role in Israel's crimes against Palestinians. Later on in the program, Jon will report on the resistance in Gaza, revealing its fallen commander, Ahmed al-Yazji, who was responsible for a string of high-profile ambushes targeting Israeli tanks and troops in Beit Hanun in late 2024 and early 2025. And just a quick note, we won't have a regular show next Thursday, February 19th, but we'll be back on February 26th. And of course, all of our coverage will continue on electronicintifada.net. But first, let's take a look at the news. Here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine. Israel continues to kill and injure Palestinians across the Gaza Strip 125 days into the fraudulent ceasefire. According to the Ministry of Health in Gaza, at least 586 Palestinians have been killed since October 10th, and more than 1,500 have been injured. On Tuesday, at least 7 Palestinians were killed in separate attacks in central and northern Gaza. Al-Aqsa Radio reported that an Israeli airstrike targeted a motorcycle in central Gaza, killing 3 Palestinians, and that at least half a dozen airstrikes were reported in southern Rafah. On Monday, February 9th, at least 4 Palestinians were killed and others were injured when Israel bombed a residential apartment in the Nasser neighborhood west of Gaza City. At Al-Shifa Hospital, reporter Nahed Hajjaj filmed people grieving over their loved ones killed in the attack. Al Jazeera's Ibrahim Al-Khalili told the network on Monday that the attack on the apartment building was, quote, another deadly escalation carried out by the Israeli military. He said that the building had already been targeted and partially damaged during the genocide, and that, quote, the renewed attack left dozens injured and they were transported to a hospital. Al-Nasser is a very crowded neighborhood, he added. People took refuge in this neighborhood and took refuge in that partially damaged residential building. They were forced to live there because of the scarcity of shelters. Also on Monday, the Wafa news agency reported that Israeli forces shot and killed a farmer, Khalid Baraka, east of Deir Balah in central Gaza. On February 6th, Israeli forces carried out a series of strikes in Gaza City and Khan Yunis, killing at least 6 Palestinians. Reporter Khamis Al-Rafi filmed an attack in the Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City on a building that was one of several in which residents were ordered by the Israeli military to leave. Journalist Mohammed Al-Saifi filmed another angle of the attack on the building. On February 3rd and 4th, at least 27 Palestinians were killed and dozens were wounded in a series of attacks, including strikes on the Tufah neighborhood of Gaza City and on tents in the Mawasi camp for forcibly displaced families in southern Gaza. 2 infants, a 5-month-old and a 10-day-old newborn, were killed in so-called double-tap attacks in Al-Mawasi, as well as Hussein Hassan Hussein Al-Samiri, a paramedic with the Palestine Red Crescent Society, who was killed as he rescued and evacuated the wounded. Journalist Ahmed Al-Najjar, who is a recent guest on this live stream, stated on social media that 2 sisters, Rafah and Rimas Abu Jameh, were also murdered in the double-tap strike on tents, ostensibly during a so-called ceasefire. Reporter Ahmed Sabah recorded footage of Palestinians mourning over some of the 14 bodies of their loved ones killed in Gaza City. Israel killed a toddler early in the morning on February 2nd. Local reports say that 3-year-old Iyad Ahmed al-Rabaya was killed after Israeli naval boats shelled tents sheltering displaced families in the Al-Mawasi area west of Khan Yunis. These massacres, escalating in intensity, followed a series of attacks on January 31st. Reporter Mazen Brim captured footage of some of the Israeli airstrikes by drones and fighter jets on the Mawasi Khan Yunis displacement tent camp. Approximately 30 Palestinians were killed and nearly 70 were injured in attacks that day. Researcher Maha Husseini, who was a guest on this live stream recently, stated that 7 people were killed in an Israeli strike on a tent belonging to the Abu Hadeid family in the Al-Mawasi area of Khan Yunis, and 8 were killed in central and western Gaza City. An attack on a police station northwest of Gaza killed 14. Photographer Youssef Al-Zanoun of ActiveStills captured images of Palestinians inspecting the site of the attack in Gaza City's Sheikh Radwan neighborhood, while bodies piled up inside Al-Shifa Hospital. On Tuesday, the Gaza government media office assessed the scale of Israel's attacks 4 months after the signing of the so-called ceasefire agreement, as well as Israel's deliberate failure with absolute impunity to meet its humanitarian aid obligations. According to the media office, as of February 10th, Israel has violated the agreement 1,620 times, with nearly 600 shooting incidents, 80 incursions, 750 shelling and targeting incidents, and 230 demolitions of homes and buildings. Humanitarian aid trucks are trickling in, but at only 43% of the expected compliance rate. And that 43% is higher than the number of fuel trucks, of which only 14% of the expected volume has entered Gaza. The media office said that the Israeli occupation has also failed to allow the entry of materials necessary for infrastructure maintenance and repairs. It has not allowed the entry of heavy equipment for the civil defense to remove rubble and recover bodies. It has not allowed the entry of medical and health equipment, supplies, and medicines. It has not allowed the entry of a sufficient supply of tents, mobile homes, and shelter materials. It has not allowed the operation of the power plant, and it has not adhered to the yellow line and has rather encroached further across the Gaza Strip. On February 4th, Israel sent back to Gaza the bodies of 54 Palestinians, as well as 66 boxes containing unidentified human remains. The Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza stated that its medical teams were handling the bodies and preparing to collect any relevant identifying information in order to give them to any remaining family members. Dr. Munir al-Bursh, the Director General of the Gaza Health Ministry, stated that, quote, "Today we stand before closed boxes, searching inside for the features of our sons and daughters. In the absence of forensic tools, no DNA testing, and not even the minimum medical and forensic capabilities that would enable us to identify or document them as befits a human being. How can we restore names to bodies that have been reduced to numbers on bags and boxes? How can families receive their sons and daughters when their features are erased, their bones shattered, and their bodies violated even after death?" Dr. Al-Bursh added, quote, "We are not asking for the impossible, nor demanding a privilege. We are demanding a basic right, that a human being be returned as a human being, that their body be preserved, that their identity be protected, and that their bodies be returned to their families with dignity, not in coffins, not as fragments, not as mere numbers. When the world remains silent in the face of the scene, Gaza is not the only victim, but silence becomes complicity in the crime." Quote, "The medical system in the Gaza Strip has collapsed at every stage of care," says our contributor Asim El-Nabih, who reported on the situation of Gaza's health sector this week for for Al Arabi TV. He stated on social media this week that, quote, "From the moment a wounded person is evacuated from the site of an attack, the failure is already underway due to the crippling of ambulance services and Israel's restriction on fuel supplies. The collapse deepens with severe shortages of medicines, medical consumables, follow-up care, and life-saving treatments, all caused by tight controls by Israel on the entry of medical equipment and supplies. This is compounded by the widespread destruction of health facilities, the lack of sufficient medical staff, and the absence of diagnostic and surgical equipment, laboratory materials, and other essential resources," Asim al-Nabi said. 46% of essential medications are out of stock, 66% of medical supplies are out of stock, and 84% of laboratory and blood bank supplies are depleted, according to the Ministry of Health. The catastrophic effects of this health annihilation, the ministry added, have made the continuation of healthcare a daily miracle and a major challenge to recovery efforts and the restoration of many specialized services. With that as the health system's baseline, deliberately destroyed by Israel during the last 28 months of genocide, bacterial meningitis cases are now spreading quickly across Gaza, particularly threatening the lives of children. Health officials said at least 15 cases have been recorded so far, with expectations that the outbreak will worsen given the dire medical and living conditions faced by the majority of the population, reported Tarek Hajjaj on February 4th for Mondoweiss. Hajjaj spoke to Dr. Ahmed Al-Farah, director of pediatrics at the Nasser Medical Complex, who said that the disease itself is not new, but what is alarming about the current wave is that all recorded cases so far are bacterial, which require immediate antibiotic treatments or risk serious complications, including hearing loss, vision loss, paralysis, brain damage, and even death. The health ministry stated last week that approximately 11,000 cancer patients are being deprived by Israel of specialized and diagnostic treatment, both inside and outside Gaza. The lack of early diagnosis and follow-up equipment, such as MRI and mammography machines, the closure of specialized hospitals, and the destruction of the Gaza Cancer Center have exacerbated the suffering of patients. Resources for providing care to cancer patients have been destroyed and depleted, most importantly, chemotherapy drugs and diagnostic equipment, the ministry said. 64% of cancer medications are completely out of stock, and 4,000 patients with referrals for treatment abroad have been waiting for more than 2 years for the crossing to open and their travel to be facilitated, the ministry added. The partial opening this week of the Rafah crossing at the Egyptian border, which has been closed since May 2024, has given many families hope that they or their loved ones could travel for medical treatment. However, only a handful of patients have been permitted to leave by Israel. Doctors say that the list of 50 patients a day slated for evacuation has been cut to as few as 5. This medical death sentence policy carried out by Israel killed 7-year-old Anwar al-Ashi, who died of kidney failure this week, waiting for medical evacuation. The Gaza government media office said that the compliance rate of Israel's approved permits to cross into Egypt was only around 25%. Turning to the occupied West Bank, Israel's security cabinet this week approved measures that consolidate and deepen its control and make it even easier for Jewish Israeli settlers to steal Palestinian land, though there were few restrictions on land theft to begin with for nearly a century now. Stating the obvious, Israeli Defense Minister and war crimes fugitive Israel Katz said that, quote, "We are anchoring settlement as an inseparable part of Israel's government policy." The Hamas political party responded that Israel's decision, quote, "falls within the framework of the fascist settlement approach, the comprehensive annexation plan, and the war of extermination and ethnic cleansing adopted by the extremist criminal occupation government. This aims to impose a false sovereignty and alter the geographical and legal realities on the ground, the Hamas political party added. Meanwhile, a 5-year-old boy with cancer who was born in Gaza but has been in Ramallah for treatment since 2022 was essentially handed a death sentence by a Jerusalem District Court judge, Ram Winograd, this week. The judge dismissed a petition filed by the human rights group 𝐓𝐡𝐞 to grant the boy entry across the Green Line to receive treatment at a hospital in Tel Aviv. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 says that, quote, the decision was made despite the severity of the boy's condition and an expert opinion by an Israeli physician recommending treatment available to him nearby and warning of the risks in transferring him abroad for treatment. Because the appropriate medical care has been made unavailable in Gaza due to the siege that was in place for 17 years before the genocide began, and now, as we just reported a few minutes ago, as cancer treatments are completely unavailable 2 years into the genocide, the boy has been receiving care in the West Bank. After treatment options in the West Bank were exhausted, his doctors determined that he now urgently requires antibody immunotherapy, treatment which is not available in the West Bank, followed by a bone marrow transplant. Despite the danger to his life, the court chose not to intervene in the state's decision denying him access. In doing so, it effectively reaffirmed the state's sweeping policy barring residents of Gaza from entering Israel since the outbreak of the war, in contrast to the practice that had been in place prior to October 2023, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 explained. The rights group has been engaged in legal proceedings regarding the boy's case since November 2025. In its most recent response to the court, submitted only after severe delays and the filing of a contempt of court motion, the state claimed that the Minister of Defense himself, Israel Katz, decided not to allow the child's passage on the grounds that Gaza residents are barred from entering Israel for any purpose whatsoever. The state also attempted to shift responsibility onto the child's family, arguing that no effort had been demonstrated to find a third country where the child could receive treatment via the Allenby crossing to Jordan, despite the position of the child's physicians that such a journey could endanger his life, while the necessary treatment is available a short drive away. In his ruling, Judge Winograd accepted the state's arguments in full. Among other things, he was determined that there was insufficient evidence presented to establish that the child's medical condition prevented his transfer to Jordan, that no attempts had been made to locate appropriate treatment for him there, and that there is no justification for judicial intervention in the decision of the Minister of Defense. He further noted that a principled petition challenging the sweeping policy barring patients from Gaza from receiving treatment in Israel or the West Bank is pending before the High Court. Accordingly, he refrained from granting individual remedy and, in effect, upheld the state's decision to abandon the child to his death, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 noted. And in the Dheisheh refugee camp south of Bethlehem, Khaled al-Sayfi, a beloved community leader, died this week after being medically neglected in an Israeli prison for 4 months. I knew Khaled al-Sayfi, or as he was called, Teacher Khaled, personally. He was the co-founder of the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 Cultural Center inside the camp, a place I used to work and live while reporting for KPFA and the Electronic Intifada and other outlets beginning in the early 2000s. Teacher Khaled was released from an Israeli prison where he was medically neglected and in deteriorating health. He was released in critical condition to an intensive care unit as he was unable to walk and suffered from severe pulmonary fibrosis after being denied adequate health care and medication while in detention. He died just 1 week after his release from prison. Khaled al-Sayfi was 67 years old. We send our sincere condolences to the al-Sayfi family and all of the children he taught and mentored over 30 years of 𝐓𝐡𝐞's work in Dheisheh refugee camp. We've published many features in the last week, but we wanted to highlight The Toxic Legacy of Genocide by Islam El-Habil, an engineer from Gaza writing from Malaysia. Before the genocidal war, daily life in Gaza included an informal but functional plastic collection system. A waste collector moved through the neighborhoods using a donkey-drawn cart, calling for residents to sell plastic and scrap materials. This activity was not only a source of income, but also an integral part of local solid waste management practices. Households commonly separated plastic waste at the source, sorting larger plastic items such as cups, plates, toys, and plastic appliances. These materials were stored and later collected by the waste collector, who transported them from one street to another. The process provided livelihood support while simultaneously contributing to the environmental protection by reducing plastic accumulation in public spaces. It created income-generating opportunities by reducing plastic accumulation in streets and directing part of the waste into limited recycling pathways, depending on available facilities and technical capacity, thereby supporting basic environmental protection and public health under blockade conditions. Following the genocide that began in October 2023, the system collapsed, leaving plastic waste uncollected and accumulating in the environment, where it increasingly releases pollutants into air, water, and human bodies. The destruction caused by Israel extends beyond physical infrastructure. It disrupts established material management systems and reshapes the relationship between society and waste, resulting in a highly polluted environment with limited or no alternatives for mitigation, generating global consequences that extend beyond Gaza and pose broader environmental risks to the surrounding region. After Israel cut off fuel and electricity supplies on October 9, 2023, fuel has become largely inaccessible, forcing thousands of Palestinians to confront an urgent and ongoing energy shortage. As the destruction continued over months and available firewood, including salvaged doors and household materials, was progressively depleted, displaced families increasingly resorted to emergency alternatives, the most hazardous of which was burning plastic for cooking and heating. The conversion of plastic into fuel, as it is sporadically and dangerously done in Gaza under the duress of the Israeli blockade and genocide, involves a sequential process that begins with collecting plastic from different locations and sorting it by type, a task made extremely difficult under conditions of war and severe resource scarcity. Alarmingly, and far more commonly, plastic burning occurs both in improvised clay ovens and poorly ventilated, confined spaces, and as direct open burning inside displacement camps, where residents are forced to burn plastic, paper, and similar waste. In both cases, the plastic can provide fuel for cooking and warmth. This forced practice poses significant health risks, particularly to women and children, as women are typically responsible for cooking near these ovens, while children remain in close proximity. Burning plastic releases dense smoke and toxic emissions inside tents, contributing to a rise in respiratory diseases, most notably asthma and pulmonary infections, especially among children, elderly people, and women. Children represent the most vulnerable group within this exposure pathway. They grow up in environments saturated with burned plastic residues, play near plastic waste, and consume food and water stored in containers reused repeatedly under unsafe conditions. Their developing bodies are subjected to chronic exposure to pollutants at a time when laboratory facilities, environmental monitoring systems, and medical treatment capacities have been severely damaged or rendered inaccessible. In this context, plastic pollution becomes biologically embedded through prolonged exposure. Genocide, then, effectively functions as an uncontrolled system for the production and accumulation of plastic-related contamination. Even after the cessation of hostilities, plastic-derived pollutants are expected to persist in soil, groundwater, and the food chain, continuing to affect human health long after physical reconstruction begins. Discussing the reconstruction of Gaza without addressing plastic contamination therefore neglects a critical environmental and public health dimension. Debris management is not solely an engineering challenge, but a chemical and environmental one that requires structured strategies for plastic waste treatment and remediation. Without such interventions, reconstruction efforts risk reestablishing communities on contaminated land, embedding the toxic legacy of war into the rebuilt environment. Those are excerpts from The Toxic Legacy of Genocide by Islam El-Habil, an engineer from Gaza and a Malaysia-based microplastics specialist, on electronicintifada.net. And now, as we always do, we wanted to highlight people expressing joy, determination, and reclamation across Palestine and around the world. Pharmacist, writer, and tailor Omar Hamad has been posting through the genocide about his attempts to salvage and protect books from the explosions, attacks, and destruction of homes. This video is from last September, during his 10th forcible displacement since 2023. This week, Omar and his friends began rebuilding an entire library from scratch, including purchasing and self-printing around 700 books. Quote, "I carried them on my back and didn't feel their weight at all. I was incredibly happy with this accomplishment," he wrote. Quote, "These books range from Islamic works on jurisprudence, creed, the prophetic biography, Quran exegesis, and Islamic history. They also include Arabic language books and a complete encyclopedia of poetry covering Arab poets, as well as a small number of novels. As we have said, and our slogan will always remain, sometimes building a library is an act of freedom," he wrote. This week, Omar and his colleagues opened the Phoenix Library. He says that the Phoenix Library, quote, "is not only the first library to be built during the genocide in Gaza, it is the result of ideas that accumulated to reshape the very concept of a library in Gaza and to strengthen the culture of reading from which we were deprived during 2 years of educational genocide. Despite all circumstances being against us, with the rising costs of basic construction materials and the soaring prices of books and paper, we defied all odds." You can find out much more about Omar's work and the new Phoenix Library in Gaza by going to his Instagram, omar.hamad7. And that's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our new features by our brave writers in Gaza. You're watching the Electronic Intifada live stream. I'm Nora Barrows-Friedman with my colleague Ali Abunimah. Hi, Ali.
Hi, Nora. Thank you for that. And my condolences for teacher Khaled. And, you know, what I think the thread between teacher Khaled and Omar Hamad and the library he's building in Gaza is that Palestinians have always had to struggle for education, and it's always been grassroots. And I've been watching Omar's efforts. He's working with other people in Gaza, and it's incredible, the library they've built in these past few months. Extraordinary.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And just, he was posting these pictures during every displacement that he endured of, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 huge duffel bags filled with books, and he was carrying them and dragging them from place to place. During the winter storms about a month ago, some of them were damaged, but he was able to salvage what he could and move them somewhere else. And now he and his friends are opening up this library. So it is just, it's beautiful, and it's unbearable at the same time, as everything always is these days. So Ali, I know you wanted to say a few words about one of our colleagues before we go to our interview.
Yeah, thank you, Nora. On behalf of all of us at the Electronic Intifada, I want to offer our sincere condolences and sympathies to our colleague David Cronin on the passing of his father, Vincent Cronin, last Friday. I had the opportunity to meet Vincent a few months ago when I was in Ireland. He was a keen viewer of this program and a passionate and deeply engaged supporter of justice in Palestine and around the world. And so I just want to say on behalf of all of us, our thoughts are with David, his mother Mary, and all of their extended family. We send them all our solidarity and our love.
We do. We do. Thank you so much for that, Ali. And we love you, David. And let's go to the interview that you did with Alex Mitov.
Yeah, it's a great one. And it's all self-explanatory, so let's roll it.
Fantastic.
Watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada live stream, I'm Ali Abu Ni'ma. After weapons manufacturers, technology is arguably the second most complicit sector in Israel's ongoing genocide, according to the Palestinian-led boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. On this program, we've previously spoken to former workers from Microsoft who paid with their jobs for speaking out against that company's support for the Israeli military as it commits genocide. Another major tech firm, Dell Technologies, has long been instrumental to Israeli apartheid. But as Omar Zahza reported for the Electronic Intifada last year, the company's complicity goes even further than previously known, particularly because Dell supplies technology for Israel's artificial intelligence-assisted genocide in Gaza. One worker at Dell understood what was going on and decided he could not be part of it anymore. Here's Alex Mitov. He wrote a recent piece for the Electronic Intifada headlined, "Why I Quit Dell Over Gaza," and he joins us now. Welcome, Alex.
Hello, Ali. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, Alex. It's our honor too. You wrote that a few months ago, you resigned from your job as a senior support technician at Dell, quote, because I refused to continue selling my labor to a corporation complicit in Israel's genocide of Palestinians. Alex, talk about how you became aware of Israel's role and why you decided you had to quit your job there.
I became aware of Israel's role and honestly about politics in general after October 7th. That was the big reveal moment for me. Before that, I wasn't at all political. Like, I listened to it occasionally, and I didn't really want to be an activist. I wanted to just do what I wanted to do, stay in my own bubble. And what was largely politics was just leftists and what seemed to me at that point arguing over nothing and just doing what they do. But after the Al-Aqsa flood operation happened on the 7th of October, it became clear to me that something very important, very significant was going on, and I absolutely had to find out more. So I started to research, what is Zionism? Why is this happening? What is Palestine? Who are the Palestinians? And everything that you cover here on this very program. And the more I learned, the more I realized I'm living in a society built on lies. And I couldn't just continue on like everything was fine and dandy, like it was just another standard political crisis that was going to blow over in a few months. I needed to decide what I was going to do with my life, and I needed to figure out, okay, I now know what's going on. What am I going to do with that?
And Alex, it's clear in your article and from talking to you that you felt you needed to resign for your own conscience. But what do you hope to achieve by going public about it? What's your message to other people in the tech industry? And what have you learned from the other campaigns that tech workers have been doing?
My message to anybody else, if you're in the tech industry right now and you're working for a big tech company, be it Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Dell, Apple, etc., etc., complicity will not protect you. That's critical, because it wasn't just about my own conscience that I resigned. Yes, it was a big part in that. In fact, the last 3 weeks of Dell when I was working were some of the hardest, because I knew I needed to get out. But it was also for my own safety, because it wasn't just about resigning from Dell. It was about resigning from an entire country, an entire society, an entire worldview. I think we're all seeing what's happening right now in the United States, especially with the ICE terrorists who are marauding across the streets, executing citizens like Alex Preddy and Renee Good and many others, simply for protesting them. Because ultimately, what starts abroad comes back home. And I knew that whatever I had to do, I had to get out of there. Because at the end of the day, you are useful to the system until you're not. I mean, just look at what happened with Jeffrey Epstein and all those files coming out. So at the end of the day, if you're a worker, get out now, because at the end of the day, when it comes to your labor, you don't want to be supporting the system that could take you out next.
You said you wanted to resign from a worldview and from a country. So you've lived your whole life in the United States. What do you mean by that? What changed in your worldview about the United States and about the system you were working in? You talk a little bit more about that in the article, but I want you to tell us more about that now.
Sure. So my worldview was that it was natural for humanity to be divided into these countries, essentially a nationalist worldview. It was like the air that I breathed, never questioned it, never had any reason to. And growing up as a kid, I didn't pay attention much to politics, but whenever, I heard anything about the Middle East as we know it today, or whether it's West Asia or North Africa or any part of that world, I just had this vague association with terrorism that they want us to have, that I didn't question. But as I realized how everything was all built on lies, in a sense where the powerful of America wanted to be the biggest criminals, make all the money in the world, kill anyone who got in their way, and criminalize anybody who stood in their way, I basically, the idea of America, the idea of nationalism, where we're in these countries that have to fight each other rather than humanity working together to solve global issues, just dissolved. So I would consider myself a citizen of the whole world rather than a citizen of an individual country.
Alex, let's talk a bit more about Palestine now, and about how you came to understand the genocide that generated this whole change in your worldview and your whole approach to life. In your article, you write, "I'm haunted by Hind Rajab's final phone call. The gunfire audible through the line as the little girl begs for rescue tears my heart. Audio from the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites sounded like hell, screaming, bullets, and panic. These were never aid sites, but militarized death traps." People listening carefully to those words from your article, Alex, will notice that you only talk about sounds. And that's because, as you also say in the article, you are blind. For those of us who are sighted and who are not in Gaza, our primary experience of the genocide has been by seeing the constant flow of horrific videos and images from Gaza. That's something you cannot experience the same way we do. Talk about what learning about Palestine has been like for you as a blind person, and how being blind shapes your approach to the world and to this issue.
So originally, I struggled to understand what fighting for Palestine had to do with fighting for blind people and disability justice. When I was first learning about it, yes, it fascinated me, but I was like, where's the connection here? Why is this important? And as I heard more, especially of the rhetoric that a lot of the groups would use who are fighting for Palestine and the people, one thing that really resonated with me is that nobody is free until we all are. And so when you've got a genocidal military committing a mass disabling event, which is what that is. And what's happening is obviously not everyone is instantly dying. There are so many people with disabilities in Gaza, including being blind, as a result of the airstrikes and the ground operations. But I even have a Palestinian friend who was born blind, not at all as a result of the military actions, but of course, it's just harder for blind people in Gaza. I remember you previously covered on this program how Israel bombed a site that was specifically for blind people. I realized, okay, so we have to take action against the systems, the structures, and the ideas that say these people's lives are expendable because at the end of the day, there is this worldview that it's like a Darwinian natural selection survival of the fittest. And under that worldview, people like me don't do very well. So I want to not just free Palestine, but free the whole world from this worldview so that we all can live better.
And you talk in your article, and when I've been speaking to you, Alex, you talk about the process that you went through learning about Palestine, looking for community. Some people listening to us today might be on a similar journey, or they might just be getting curious, wanting to dig beyond the media headlines and propaganda. Talk about what are some of the ways that you learned about the reality in Palestine, got some of your questions answered. You said that you were curious to learn about Zionism. What was that learning process for you? What are the types of resources that you discovered and used along the way? Were there any organizations you connected to? Talk about your journey to that political understanding.
Of course. So originally, when I heard the word Zionism, I didn't really know what it meant. It's like, okay, so there's this cult-like ideology, which, interestingly enough, Zionism and Scientology are both very cult-like. And I'm like, okay, what is going on here? And so one of the things that really happened after October 7th was there was this huge push to listen to Jewish voices. Oh, you have to listen to Jewish voices. And the people who were saying that were, of course, Zionists, or in case to essentially define it literally, supporters of the state of Israel. And so I did that. A lot of what I learned about Zionism came from the pro-Israel media. So something I did a lot of was just listen to what they had to say. I wanted to understand their worldview as if I were one of them. And then I also later found this incredible organization. It's called Jewish Voice for Peace. And one of the very first books I ever read, actually, it was the very first book I ever read on this topic. It was called Solidarity is the Political Version of Love. It's by Rabbi Alyssa Wise and Rebecca Vilkemerson. And they essentially talked about the history of JVP and how it became the organization we know today. And it left me with so many more questions than answers. I didn't understand anything about how the Jewish world worked, but there was this one section in the book where they talk about Christian Zionism. And I've heard, I'm not sure exactly what the ratio is, but for every Jewish Zionist or Jewish supporter of the state of Israel, there are 10 to 30, I'm not sure, and somewhere in between, Christian supporters of the state of Israel. And so there are different reasons why they do it. They think either it's going to bring about end times and they get saved through the rapture and everybody else dies, or they're going to get blessed and they're going to be prosperous. And I'm like, wait a minute. This Christian Zionism thing sounds very hauntingly familiar. I think I know people from my childhood who actually believe in this ideology. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So a lot of the friends that I had were largely Jewish. And so as a result, of course, I asked them about Zionism, what it is. And I did a lot of reading, a lot of researching on what it all meant. And so as a result of that, as I went through my transformation, my very close Jewish friends who were with me through that process, that's the reason why specifically Jewish anti-Zionism has a special place in my heart. I really wanted to be part of not just a movement against genocide, but for a better future. So if you read the way that the statements are printed by JVP, it's not just about, oh, we're against Israel, we're against the genocide, but it's, hey, a better world is not only possible, but it's worth fighting for. Just the way that you do with Nora on this very program. And I'm like, okay, that kind of teamwork is awesome. I want to be part of that. So that's how I got into this.
Well, we're happy to have you on the team, Alex. Very happy. And thank you for sharing that. Alex, I want to play a video of Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, narrating a poem that was very famously used in Apple's Think Different ad campaign in the late 1990s. You told me that you listened to this and it had a big effect on you. Just for as a footnote, when the original ad aired, Steve Jobs didn't narrate it. It was actually narrated by the actor Richard Dreyfuss, but Steve Jobs did record this version that only came out and surfaced later on. And that's the one you listened to and we're going to listen to now. So let's play that video and then I'm going to get your reaction to it.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
I'm not sure if the video there was actually original to the audio, but the audio appears to be of Steve Jobs. But in any case, those were the words spoken in the ad campaign, and they had an effect on you. Why, Alex?
Because this quote, it describes me and everyone I know perfectly. I needed a way to, I wanted a way to phrase how I felt about the world and my place in it. And last year, when the iOS 26 update came out, there was a new app added. It was called Preview. And this quote appears on the home screen of that app. And prior to that update happening, I didn't know about it. But as soon as I came across it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me and everyone I really like. Everyone who with my political beliefs, like, we are the round pegs in the square holes. we are proud of this. Like, we get called crazy. We get called conspiracy theorists. We get called rebels, troublemakers, literally everything that's in the quote. And so I'm like, this is me. This is everything I live for. And it's not just me. It's so many people. I would argue, Ali, this is also you. I would say it's everyone who runs the program here. I would say it's everyone who gets out in the streets and fights for Palestine, whether you're protesting, whether you're advocating for BDS. And so it's ironic to me that these companies, for example, Apple in this case, they want to encourage that sort of rebellious mentality among their workers. Like, all these CEOs, they'll come out and say, oh, there's a good idea born every minute, because they don't actually care about the worldview that we want to build, at least definitely not the big tech leaders we have today. But they want to inspire people to make them money. And so when we become those very rebels that these CEOs talk about, they punish us for it. So to all of those big tech leaders today, Michael Dell, Jeff Bezos, Peter Thiel, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Mark Zuckerberg, Alex Karp. I mean, how many of them do I have to list out? If you're going to encourage your workers, inspire them to change the world, why are you surprised when they do? Why are you surprised when they understand how you and your companies contribute to the harm, and how when you become the status quo, you're inevitably going to get challenged? So I would love for all of these big tech leaders who are unquestionably and intentionally complicit in not just Israel's genocide of Palestinians, but global violence around the world. I mean, just look at ICE. Dell also supports ICE, one of the biggest customers, if not, if I remember correctly, the biggest customer of Dell is the United States federal government. And they do all sorts of crimes against humanity all around the world. So to these CEOs, we have done what you wanted us to do by becoming those people. But don't be surprised when you get put on the back burner for the harm you've caused.
And you remind me, Alex, listening to that, and it is such an irony that all these corporations try to celebrate uniqueness, and one of their favorite terms is thinking outside the box. But when you do it, they want to crush you, and we've seen that time and again. You reminded me of something you say in your article that I think is very important, that the complicity of Dell or Microsoft or any of these companies in this genocide is not inevitable. It's not just a fact of life that we have to roll over and accept. And you make the point that Dell could pull out of Israel. It could stop supplying technology to the Israeli military. But in fact, they did do that after Russian forces invaded Ukraine in 2022. Dell cut all ties with Russia. They took all their employees out of Russia. And you make the point that Dell has not done that, even after the Israeli military tech campus, where Dell has one of its major facilities in Israel, was attacked by Iranian missiles after Israel attacked Iran last June. So again, you also point to that type of hypocrisy, where they do one thing in one case and completely different thing in another case, right?
Yeah, in fact, I mean, it's not just last June, but I'm sure even now, there's all these talks of, well, are we on the brink of World War III? Are these nuclear talks serious? All of these tech offices, like, if by some miracle you are in occupied Palestine, what is now known as Israel, and you're a tech worker in one of these offices, and for whatever reason you happen to be listening to the Electronic Intifada today, you could be next in one of these raids or these missile strikes simply because you live there. Like, these missiles, when they land, they don't ask, what are your politics, before they explode. They just kill you. So, like, at the end of the day, if Dell cared about its employees, they would get them out of the line of fire, because they want to say how much they support great causes around the world, but when you go to the Dell, Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, I believe it's at dell.org, you'll see all of the giving they do, but they do talk about Michael's Jewish upbringing, and he is very proud of his Jewish Zionism, and it's really sad that a people who were persecuted by Nazis and so many other people, not all of them obviously, but a lot of them have gone on to become the very thing they despise about everyone else. And when you make that comparison, their supporters, and of course all the Zionists, will call you an anti-Semite, just as, because that's one of the bullet points of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition. Well, when you act like Nazis, people are going to call you Nazis. When you put your workers in danger by essentially supporting this military, and let's be clear, big tech is the new military. What I mean by that is this. Everyone wants to talk about the arms race and the yada, yada, yada. Well, the arms race has shifted. It's no longer conventional military weaponry. It's now AI, cyberspace. It's tech fueled. I mean, we're seeing the AI Nakba in Gaza as it's happening, these AI driven machines that create these kill lists, but also the AI Nakba is coming to you everywhere in the world. Even if it doesn't come in the form of bombs and bullets, it'll come in the form of mass surveillance, replacing your jobs, automating everything you did, and now you don't have a way to take care of yourself because you got laid off. That's the new arms race. And unfortunately, the reality in which we currently live is that big tech is completely embedded in the military. And so when you work for big tech, it can be argued, well, someone will argue, oh, they were legitimate military targets, so we had to do it. I don't like the reality of death and destruction that condemns all of humanity to. But we have to be those people who say, this is the reality. We're going to acknowledge it, and we're going to work to actually minimize the harm and repair the world and make it a better place for all of us.
Well, that's a good thought to come to, I think, a closing question in this conversation, Alex. You are a longtime listener to the Electronic Intifada live stream, and you listen to a lot of things. You are an incredibly informed person. I want to ask you how we're doing and what we could be doing to make it easier for people like you, for people who are blind, to understand and experience the information that we're doing. We all most of us rely on sight, but we do try to make the program accessible. And I'm asking you as someone who can give us your real world experience of that. And I'm also asking you because since you left Dell, you've been working on developing your own accessibility focused business. So I guess I want you to give us a real-time accessibility audit of how we're doing and what all of us could be doing better to make the world more accessible and more just.
Of course. So I can start with the the business that I'm doing. I'll give you a brief overview of that, and then I'll explain about how you could do better. So basically, I'm now an accessibility consultant. What I do is I specialize in user testing, where you'll give me an app or a website and I'll go through it with all the different screen readers and all the different platforms, and I'll tell you, okay, this works well, this doesn't. In fact, in the United States right now, and this has been a problem for a very long time, there is a huge problem where so many apps and websites are not accessible, and there are deeply corrupt plaintiff lawyers who are looking to take advantage of it. They are suing a lot of small businesses out of business for accessibility issues. And these lawyers, they don't want to fix anything. They just want to make money. They want to extort money out of everyone under the guise of accessibility. And so blindness essentially becomes a weapon for them to make money, but not actually fix the problem. Additionally, there are these overlay widget companies who will give you a little widget, put this on your site, it'll make it work. No, it's a scam. Don't give them your money. The only way to get real, proper accessibility is to have someone do a manual audit. They go through a website, they make a note of everything that's wrong. Someone does remediation. And at the end of the day, someone like me will go in, test it, screen record the testing of that website or app or software program. And then you have that video so that when these corrupt, disgusting lawyers come after you, you have evidence to defend yourself. As far as the Electronic Intifada, I would love for you to interview blind Palestinians in Palestine, but also in the diaspora. I mean, my friend that I mentioned earlier, I would love for you to interview her, and we can get into how we met and how now we talk all the time about pretty much everything in life, from politics to how we're doing. It's sad we haven't been able to meet in person yet, but one day that will happen in a free and liberated Palestine. And so I think I want to close out with this. The world as a whole, and each of us as individuals, face a decision of who we're going to be. Are you going to be these far-right Zionists like Randy Fine, the worst of the worst, Douglas Murray? You know, as soon as you start to criticize Israel, have you been there? He says. British imperialist scum like Douglas Murray. Have you been there? That's his only thing. It's like beating a dead pony over and over again. Are you going to be the people in the middle? Like, this is most of corporate media. Most of honestly the world when it comes to these world leaders. Oh, we're going to get a ceasefire. We're going to make it all happen. You know, but they couldn't find a ceasefire if their lives depended on it. They say they're liberal. Genocide Joe, this is you. But you did nothing for Palestine. You only enabled the suffering. Or are you going to be an honest media reporter like Ali Abunimah right here on the Electronic Intifada, or Nora Barrows-Friedman, and so many others? Well, I know who I'm with. I'm with you. Because we're going to put them all to shame. Bari Weiss, you're going down. All of these people who proudly cheerlead for mass death, you're going to be the past. And you're not going to be part of the world to come. We are the future. So come and be with us.
I couldn't put it better myself, Alex. Thank you for being an example, for being a role model, for putting your principles into action. And I hope that you will inspire many people and will continue to follow what you do. And I'll talk to you later about some more ideas for how we can make our coverage more accessible. Thank you so much for joining us today, Alex. And a reminder, your article, which I encourage everyone to read at the Electronic Intifada, is headlined, "Why I Quit Dell Over Gaza." and I hope people will read it and share it. And best of luck to you, and great success with everything you do, Alex.
Thank you so much, Ali. It is the honor of a lifetime to stand up for the cause of humanity itself. Because to quote or paraphrase Dr. Mohammed Mustafa, he was talking to a crowd of people. And he said, I know this is a very pro-Palestine crowd, but we have to be more than just a pro-Palestinian movement. We've got to be a pro-humanity movement. So there's no bigger honor and privilege and everything good than to be a part of it, because there are no downsides to a free Palestine.
Amen to that.
Oh my goodness. That was so extraordinary. I love that. I love that at the end, what he said. But the whole interview was remarkable. So thanks for doing that, Ali.
It was great. Alex is really inspiring and courageous. He could have taken the safe and easy route and had a comfortable corporate career, but he decided to take a risk because he felt so strongly.
Yeah.
And I know there's lots of people out there who feel the same way. He decided to come forward and tell his story and take action. And I think it's extraordinary. So well done, Alex. And thank you for standing up and being heard. It really matters.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. And I think it really inspires others who are in similar positions to also take action. If there's one or two people, standing up for their beliefs to these enormous corporations, sometimes they can just be ignored. But if it's a wave and a growing, a growing community of people who say that they're not going to help these companies slaughter children or provide technology to a genocidal state, then it makes a really big difference. And all it takes is one spark, as they say. So yeah, thank you, Alex. Let's bring Jon on. Hey, Jon.
Hello. Yeah, it was great to see Alex.
Hi, Jon.
Good job, Alex.
Yeah. Yeah. So 4 months into a fraudulent ceasefire, 125 days, I believe. As I was talking about in the news reports, I mean, just these escalating attacks. And meanwhile, there's once more, there's silence from anyone who could stop this. Jon, what have you been looking at when it comes to 4 months into the ceasefire?
I've been looking at these martyr videos, statements that have been released by the 𝐶𝐤m brigades and other factions as well. We're going to do the DFLP as well today. So during the war, the fallen fighters were not acknowledged for security reasons. I think we all watching the genocide understand what would happen.
Yeah.
If names, family names and whatnot came out. So they didn't do that. And we know that 𝐶𝐤m acknowledged their senior most leaders. But in this Moons of the Flood series, they're doing all levels of fighters, from their foot soldiers to their small crew commanders all the way up. So, and they're about 30 into those, and each of them is different, but a few times I've caught footage that they have snuck into those, and I'm going to dig down on that footage, and we're going to put faces to the fighters that we saw carry out these operations for 2+ years.
Incredible. All right. Well, Ali, why don't you do the honors?
I'm looking forward to seeing what you've got, Jon. Take it away.
All right. All right, so you are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. I am Jon Elmer. This is the Resistance Report for day 860 of Israel's genocidal war on Gaza. It is the 126th day of the fraud ceasefire. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza just in the past 24 hours said that there's been 8 killed and 20 wounded that have arrived to Gaza's hospitals. Some have not arrived because civil defense and ambulance crews have been cut off. But that brings the total since the ceasefire began to 591 killed, 1,578 wounded, and civil defense says that they have retrieved 720 of a thought to be 10,000 buried in the rubble in Gaza. So we're going to focus today on Beit Hanun, and we'll take a look at this first map. We're going to look at Beit Hanun was where the war began. It was the spot of the initial Israeli invasion. If you look at this map, Beit Hanun is in purple there in the bottom right corner, which is the northeast corner of Gaza. At the top of that map is the Mediterranean Sea. You can see Gaza City there. And the purple areas is areas where the Israeli military withdrew from. The lighter purple, the darker purple is where they occupy beyond the green line, and you can see the IDF logo all along there. That's Israeli military positions. So you can see there's 3 on the border east of Beit Hanun, and then a real dense pack of them up towards Beit Lahia in the northwest. And you can see that yellow piece of territory, that is territory held by Israeli militias. They're anti-Hamas militias, anti-Palestinian militias, collaborator militias are set up in that area. And you can see the way that Israel has used the yellow line to create bases all along the eastern edge of Gaza. And that is something that they're doing every single day. They're still destroying on the eastern side of the yellow line. The next map shows it a little more zoomed in. So you can see the yellow line there. And Beit Hanun is on the far right of the map that you're seeing there. And you can see the armistice line. The other side of that is the Gaza envelope. So you can see Beit Hanun. It's a agricultural community of about 50, 60,000 people before the war. And you can see on that map, the yellow line, how far Beit Hanun is on the eastern side of the yellow line. And the blue line that you can see has small yellow blocks, the yellow blocks that mark the yellow line. So you can see, as Nora reported, the constant creeping of the yellow line further and further into the populated centers of Gaza. So we're something that we're definitely following, and something that the Americans who are overseeing the ceasefire from a few miles away in southern Israel apparently don't have any problem with this at all. We haven't heard anything, not to the assassinations and the killings. We haven't heard anything from the Americans on that front. And so on the eastern side of that line is demolition is happening in Beit Hanun, something that they could not do throughout the war. And more than 62% of Gaza falls on the eastern side of that yellow line, which means it's a free fire zone in that entire area. Okay, let's take a look at the first martyr here. This is how all of the videos start, the moons of the flood. Our fighter here is 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, and he was a company commander in the Beit Hanun battalion, part of the Northern Brigade. Beit Hanun, again, you're seeing the fighters. This is just some footage of Ahmed in his days leading his company. Company's about 100 soldiers that he's got under his command in the Beit Hanun battalion. And we're seeing him interact with his soldiers. We're going to see some training footage, just general footage, putting a face to these fighters that we've watched for 750 days. And Beit Hanun especially is, I think, one of the places, if not the place, that underscored, highlighted the real tenacity of the resistance many times, multiple times, many times, they were told that they were defeated. Even in the first week of November of 2023, so just a few weeks into the war, Le Monde wrote about Beit Hanun. They said that Beit Hanun is not only dead, Beit Hanun no longer exists. So that was right at the beginning of the war. A few weeks later, Israel said they had operational control over Beit Hanun, which they never had, and they repeatedly have gone back into Beit Hanun. But in the period of time that we're going to focus on here is the fall of 2024. Israel went into the north to carry out the general's plan, which was to completely ethnically cleanse the north, drive everybody down into the south. That was a failed operation, in large part failed because of the Beit Hanun battalion. You can see him there operating in his tunnels, operating with a heavy machine gun there. We see him training his troops. And then we see these little clips from the battle. And I grabbed these clips, went back into the archive, and I'm going to show you these operations that he took part in here, that we can see he's the leading fighter in these operations. They're just those little clips. But when we go back and find those clips, they're a really remarkable series of operations that in some ways defined this war. There you can see him there on the left. And that's how we see the fighters normally, completely, blurred out. We see their personalities. We see them reading books in their positions. We see the poetry that they cite, but we never see their face. And here is our chance to see our face. And here Ahmed says, he's paraphrasing the prophet, basically saying that creating an hour of justice and truth between peoples is better than 60 years of dishonor, which I think really captures the whole nature of the October 7th operation and the Palestinian resistance. Abu Ubaidah at this time, right around this time, in the fall of 2024, he talked about the 100-day siege, because the general's plan was a 100-day siege on northern Gaza. And Abu Ubaidah said, after more than 100 days of comprehensive destruction and genocide carried out by the enemy army in the northern Gaza Strip, our mujahideen are still inflicting heavy losses on it and dealing with it in harsh blows that have left more than 10 soldiers dead and dozens wounded just in the last 72 hours. We confirm that the losses in the ranks of the failed occupation army are much more than what it announces, and the enemy will be defeated from the northern Gaza Strip, dragging its tail of shame without being able to break the back of the resistance. And the only achievement it has made is destruction, devastation, and massacres against innocent people. Let's take a look at number 3, because this was the operation that Ahmed was a part of. We're watching the fighters here moving through destroyed buildings, targeting Israeli troops. This was part of a series of operations, more than 20 operations that happened right in the days leading up to the ceasefire. And it's not a stretch to believe that these operations were what pushed Israel to the ceasefire, because after the 100 days of siege, Beit Hanun was last. And so they went into Beit Hanun in the final 2 weeks in late December and early January. And you can see the fighters there. They're running the lines to their shawad. They're setting up ambushes for Israeli troops. And this is what Israeli troops said at the time. You can see him crawling there through the destroyed land, and you're going to see Israeli soldiers come into this area. This is a detailed ambush that killed 5 Israeli soldiers and injured at least 8 more. Though you can see them entering at the top of the screen there before that operation detonates. Here we're going to watch a D9 armored bulldozer get hit by a buried, unexploded 2,000-pound bomb here coming up on your screen right about now. You won't miss that one. These operations, there were a number of buried unexploded ordnance operations. They were detonated from tunnels. They were watched by cameras. And this is from Channel 12, who interviewed Israeli soldiers that went into Beit Hanun, and they started freaking out. This is the testimonies from the soldiers. "We are fighting in an environment monitored by cameras by the militants. They have planted explosive devices in every alley and are activating them from inside the tunnels," which you can see here on your screen. Their underground network is fully operational. "We cannot see them with the naked eye. For a week and a half, there have been no direct identification of militants. They have completely planted Beit Hanun with huge amount of explosive devices and remnants of Air Force bombs." There on the screen, you see flipped over, destroyed excavator that was destroying houses. The soldiers go on to say, "Every alley, every intersection is filled with state-of-the-art cameras, 360-degree thermal cameras. They choose targets carefully, monitor movement through cameras. If there is a drone, they do not activate the bombs. But if the military force is there, they activate it. They activate the explosive devices as soon as the arrival of the rescue teams arrive, and they shoot at those rescue forces as well. The reinforcements, not the rescue forces. We know that they don't shoot at the rescue forces, and that's something they have not done a single time in this 2+ years of war. But you can see the fighters here moving in all of this destroyed ground. And Beit Hanun, the Israelis believed that Beit Hanun had been destroyed, but they were wrong. In this case, this is in January 2025, but they made these claims going back to November 2023. And then when the war resumed again in March of 2025, the first place that ambushed Israeli troops was Beit Hanun. So really, they've been the story of this battle, the way that the troops fight in territorial brigades, so that they're always in there. When the Israelis assumed that when Beit Hanun's above ground was destroyed, the fighters would flee their positions, that they would abandon the mount of archers, if you will. But they don't. They stay in their territorial units and they fight. So the Israelis leave Beit Hanun for 6 months. They first come back in, and you see those series of operations that are just devastating operations that really shook the Israelis and pressed them into a ceasefire at that time. You can see here detonating from the tunnel, just like the soldiers said that they do. An accurate assessment. You can see those front-end loaders are just destroying houses. At this point in the war, the goal was just to destroy whatever was left, and they used the most cost-effective means to do that, like those excavators, but those excavators got targeted in Beit Hanun. So just a remarkable series of operations, one after another. We could look at number 4. Has another couple operations that were shown in that video, and this has I've done a YouTube guidelines edit here, but there you can see there's 8 soldiers, at least maybe 10, that come up on this, and they fall into this ambush here and are detonated. You can see it from a different angle from there. That operation killed at least 5 soldiers there. And like I said, in the 2-week period of time, more than 20 soldiers were killed in this window of time. You'll see the fight. This Israeli soldiers come out of their excavators here, and again get hit by a well-placed ambush. So in the time that the Israelis were not in Beit Hanun, the fighters were setting up all of these spots and predicting, as they did throughout the entire war, accurately predicting where the Israelis were going to be coming from. We can do number 5 now, Tamara. This one was, I think, one that people will remember. This was you can see the Merkava here passing through, seen on a surveillance camera. This was one of the more remarkable operations of the war, and this was in the final days of the life of Ahmed Jabil Yazji. He was killed on the 8th of January, which is the day of this operation. This massive IED, unexploded Israeli bomb underneath the tank, and this detonation separated the turret off the top of the tank. It's called a turret toss because it literally did that. Tossed the turret, separated the two, the hull, and the turret are completely separated, which you can see now come in on the screen. You can see the tracks upside down. You can see the doorway into the back where there would be 6 infantry crew. You can see on the upper right there, you can see the upside down tank turret where there would be the loader, the gunner, and the commander. And you can see here, this is the rescue operation of the soldiers in that tank. That was a remarkable operation to blast that tank many feet and the turret many meters away from the spot that it was hit. It's a really significant operation that you see there. Now, I also wanted to bring in some martyrs from other factions. If we go to number 6, the DFLP released some martyrs this week. The Marxist Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the National Resistance Brigades, Martyr Omar al-Qassem forces. And here we're seeing Field Commander Saher Jihad Abu Layla, who was 26 years old when he was killed, leading troops in training. This is probably part of the Joint Operations Room training sessions that were had, where all the groups trained together. And you can see, and you will see, their role in this battle, as I've said for the last 2.5 years. They're the artillery teams, and there you can see Saher Jihad Abu Layla operating his multiple artillery mortar units, and rocket units were the main setup there. He is commanding his troops. And this is Field Commander Hani Nabil Azam. He was also 36 when he was killed. You can see him here with his troops. Again, footage we don't really see very often, and we don't ever see really, and they put them out in these martyr videos, and you get a glimpse of these fighters that we didn't see before. And particularly, we didn't see a lot of DFLP operations that were outside of the mortar and rocket attacks that were a steady and a critical part of the war at all times. And the DFLP were part of that with the other smaller factions. And these are their commanders running a training session here with their snipers. And this is Field Commander Abdul Qadir Khalid Salah, and he was 34 years old when he was killed. And here you see him in battle. He's got a Yasin there, and he's mounting his mortar units. And we saw these videos. These videos were released all throughout the war, but they're putting their faces to these operations, and gives really the missing piece that we had on all of these operations is the actual fighters behind them. And now they're being treated at home in Gaza as heroes. There's no question about that. And you can see him here wiring up explosives, or wiring up their rocket launcher in that case, and some more training footage of the DFLP. And this is the final field commander. Actually, I messed that one up. The field commander before that was Fuad Yusuf al-Minawi, and this is Field Commander Abdul Qadir Khalid Salah, and he's 34. You can see him. This is during the Battle of Al-Aqsa Flood, and he's going to say here at the end, after he loads up his artillery rockets, that as the Battle of Tufan al-Aqsa enters its second year, we commit to fighting until the end of the aggression, which is what all the factions said. They spoke in one voice, and it's been a remarkable demonstration of Palestinian political unity that the politicians could definitely learn something from. So that was the martyr videos from the DFLP. And I just have a couple statements from Abu Ubaidah this week to read out to you. We could go to number 8 is the still of Abu Ubaidah, new Abu Ubaidah. He said this week that the despicable actions carried out by undercover traitor agents against the children of our people and its honorable resistance fighters only reflect a complete alignment with the occupation, the implementation of the occupation's agendas, and the exchange of roles with it. These cowards only act tough in areas under control of the Zionist army and under the protection of its tanks. Treachery, bullying civilians, and preying upon the heroes of the resistance who have been exhausted by hunger and siege is not manliness, but rather a desperate attempt by these individuals to prove themselves to Israeli forces. The dark fate of the descendants of Abu Rigal, from tracking dogs and tools of the occupation, has drawn near. Their punishment is death and inevitable abandonment. The enemy will not be able to protect you from the justice of our people, and you will not find in our pure land even graves that will accept your rotten carcasses. Salutations to our heroic resistance fighters besieged in Rafah, who refuse humiliation or submission and preferred martyrdom over surrender. Their story will continue to be taught to generations, and their names will be engraved in the pages of glory. That statement came out earlier this week after the killing and assassination carried out by Abu Shabab, by the group that formerly was led by Abu Shabab, captured a resistance fighter in Rafah after they had been targeted by the Israelis. There's now been more than 40 fighters in Rafah have been killed by the Israelis, but there's still more trapped on the other side of the yellow line. Israel can't find them. When they do emerge, Israel attempts to strike them, but they can't catch them all. Army Radio was pretty upset by this, that they can't catch them. They said that against this background, it's even more unbelievable that for 12 hours, the Israeli military did not know where the 4 fighters are. So they lost them. 8 fighters came out at one time. They bombed 3 of them. One was captured later by the group and humiliated in front of the cameras, one of the commanders of the Rafah Brigade, which really incensed, I think, all across Palestinian society, that video. And that is what Abu Ubaidah is talking about in that particular statement. He released a statement this morning related to Iran. So I want to just read you that, the Palestinian resistance position on Iran. We declare our solidarity along with our people with Iran, its leadership, its government, and its people. We consider any aggression against the Islamic Republic and its brotherly people to be an aggression against our Islamic nation, a criminal infringement on the sovereignty of the resistant Islamic State, and rejected the thuggery aimed at intervening in its internal affairs and attempting to impose facts on the ground through brute force. We express our confidence in the determination and steadfastness of the Iranian armed forces and the Revolutionary Guard Corps, who taught the Zionist enemy lessons during the True Promise battles, particularly True Promise 3 in June 2025, and they are capable, with the help of God, of repelling the American aggression and exercising their natural and legitimate right to self-defense and delivering harsh blows to the aggressors. We emphasize that the threats facing the Islamic Republic today and the preceding attacks and siege are a desperate attempt to seek revenge against its great people and its resistance leadership, because it stands alongside our Palestinian people and its direct and declared support for our valiant resistance, which has been able to, thanks to God, and then with the support of the free peoples of the nations, to achieve the legendary steadfastness in the Battle of Al-Aqsa Flood, breaking the prestige of the Zionist enemy and thwarting all of its declared goals. So that was Abu Ubaidah speaking about the seemingly war drums beating ever closer to an American attack on Iran. And this has been the Resistance Report for day 860 of Israel's criminal genocide in Gaza.
Thank you, as ever, Jon Elmer. I mean, you know, just the photos of what Beit Hanun looks like now. You know, it looks like in some parts it looks like what Rafah looks like now as well.
Yeah, there's nothing left.
It's it's unbelievable. But just like seeing those videos and being able to put faces and names to the ambushes that you know, shook Israel to its core. is really, as you say, remarkable, and it's really important. It's an important aspect to the story.
And that was such a critical moment.
Yeah.
It really did press Israel into the ceasefire.
Yeah, into whatever semblance of a ceasefire there is now. And Ali, I don't know if you want to talk about Netanyahu's visit to Washington, D.C. that I think it just concluded a few minutes ago. What do we know about what he was there to talk to Trump about, and what about all of these drumbeats toward war with Iran once again?
Yeah, the first thing I want to note is that Netanyahu flew to Washington with the assistance of several countries that are signatories of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and who are obligated to arrest him, or at least not to assist him to flee justice. So in particular, Greece, Italy, France, and Canada gave overflight permission to Netanyahu's plane. And that's something they have to affirmatively do. A government plane can't just enter the airspace of another country without permission. So we should take that as a personal endorsement from Mark J. Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, Emmanuel Macron, the President of France, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the Prime Minister of Greece, and Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, a positive, affirmative decision to aid and abet genocide. Of course, one of many that their countries have taken, but that has to be said. Now, in terms of their talks in Washington, what they, it seems to have been focused on Iran. It's very clear that the latest failed regime change attempt at the end of December and beginning of January is not the end of the US-Israeli effort to bring down the government of Iran, because the government of Iran supports resistance against Israel. That's the only reason. They're not interested in human rights, woman, life, freedom. None of this matters to them. They just care about the resistance to Israel. And the fact that Iran is the only country that really puts its money where its mouth is and supports the resistance in Lebanon, in Palestine, in Yemen, like it or hate it, but Palestinians have a right to resist, and they and Iran upholds that right. That's why Iran is targeted. Yeah. The US has placed itself in this position where it is threatening. It has been threatening renewed attacks on Iran since early January on the fake pretext of supporting protesters. Of course, we know, and now it's been revealed today, there are headlines that it was in fact the US government itself that was smuggling Starlink satellite internet terminals into Iran in order to try to foment this insurgency that we saw a few weeks ago. Trump followed up that with threats of military attacks, but there are credible military assessments that the US cannot change the regime in Iran through military force, cannot do significant damage to the government of Iran, to the state, and that Iran, while the US can do great harm to Iran, particularly to the civilian population, Iran can do possibly even greater damage to the United States, its interests in the region, its vassals who would allow or support their territory being used for an attack. And Iran has made clear, and this is the key point here, that seems to have put the Americans on the back foot, that they will not play the game of allowing the US to attack them and then having sort of limited or symbolic counterstrikes, and then the round is over. Iran has made clear through every forum, from the supreme leader, through the president, through every organ of its government, that an attack on Iran will mean total war. And we've talked about what that means before, for example, with Professor Mohammad Marandi.
Yeah.
Now, that's all to set the stage for what apparently happened in Washington. And the reporting a short time ago from Barak Ravid, the Israeli reporter with Axios, who is often simply a mouthpiece for US and Israeli forces, and what he reports, and perhaps we can even show this in a tweet a short time ago, he says, he's quoting Netanyahu just before flying back to Israel, quote, this is Netanyahu speaking, President Trump believes that the Iranians have already learned who they are dealing with. He thinks that the conditions he is creating, combined with the fact that they surely understand they made a mistake last time when they didn't reach an agreement, could create the conditions for achieving a good deal. He wanted to hear my opinion. I won't hide from you that I expressed general skepticism about the nature of any agreement with Iran, but I said that if an agreement is indeed reached, it must include the elements that are very important to us, to Israel, and in my view, not only to Israel. It's not just the nuclear issue, but also the ballistic missiles and the Iranian proxies in the region. That essentially concluded the conversation, and I would say, although it also touched on Gaza and the region as a whole. So what this means is that Israel and its lobby are upping the ante. Before, the US and Israel pretended or claimed that this was about the nuclear issue, that it's just about limiting Iran's nuclear enrichment capabilities and ensuring that Iran doesn't have a bomb. Now what Netanyahu is saying is, no, it's not just the nuclear issue. Iran has to give up its ballistic missiles. Iran has to basically betray all its alliances across the region, betray Palestine, betray Lebanon, betray Yemen, betray everyone. Iran has to hand over everything, just as they're demanding of Hamas and Hezbollah, and then Iran will depend on the goodwill of Israel and the United States not to harm it. Obviously, no such agreement can be reached. It's impossible. Iran has made that clear. They're not going to give up their missiles and their deterrent and disarm so that it's easier for the US to carry out regime change. And so it's hard to see where this is heading, because Trump clearly wants a deal to climb down from the military threats that he made. Netanyahu isn't going to allow a deal. He will mobilize the entire lobby and, all of the pro-Israel forces to prevent a deal that he doesn't like. And so the risk of war remains extremely high. Whether that comes in days or weeks or months, we don't know, but it doesn't look like at this point there's a way out of this confrontation that Israel and neocon US imperialist forces in Washington are pushing for. They are determined to regime change Iran, just as they're trying to do with Cuba, by starving it Gaza-like of fuel in order to bring down the government in Cuba, just as they have tried to regime change Venezuela. They are absolutely determined in this criminal path.
Yeah, and there was a report earlier this week that Indonesian troops are getting ready to be deployed to the Gaza Strip to act as kind of I'm not even sure what, some sort of forward-facing, government militia with the ostensible directive to disarm Hamas. Once again, there's...
Indonesian troops are not going to disarm Hamas. And so, but, we still don't know the makeup of the so-called International Stabilization Force.
Right.
Mohammed Shahade, the journalist, we've interviewed him on this live stream and published his articles at the Electronic Intifada. Very well-informed observer, noted today in one of his posts that it's been, some 45 days or something like that since the so-called National Committee for Administering Gaza, the puppet government headed by Ali Sharth, was appointed, and Israel still hasn't let a single one of those of its members into Gaza. So you can see there's a dynamic here also at loggerheads between the US and Israel. Remember, when the US and Israel are in conflict, that doesn't mean anything necessarily good for Palestinians or anyone else. But the conflict here is that Trump and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, are still bent on the Gaza Riviera plan, turning it into Dubai. We've talked about all those AI images, the skyscrapers, the port, and all of that. Israel doesn't want Gaza rebuilt. It wants Gaza leveled and destroyed and ethnically cleansed so they can take it and put settlers in. As John has told us so many times, behind the so-called yellow line, Israel is systematically demolishing any standing buildings to achieve that purpose. So this is all just, that's where it is.
Yeah, John, what can you say about, sorry, we're like getting totally off track here, and we're going to go to Asa in a moment, but a few days ago also there were some videos coming out of a few dozen settlers walking into northern Gaza, just kind of very casually, with the explicit aim to, as they put it, reclaim what they had been kicked out of in 2005, which so what's your response to that? How should we be looking at these very public displays of land theft and settler colonialism?
Yeah, I mean, those settlers, they pass through 3 closed military zones that could be at any point stopped by Israeli soldiers. They don't stop them. We've seen those same settlers just on the other side of the fence destroying trucks full of essential goods constantly throughout the war. And they go in, with army backing. They go in and try to assert that they're going to return to Gaza. I don't put too much stock in that. I don't think that that's a realistic thing. I think that they're just able to cross that border fence because the Israelis let them.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the ones in the uniforms are related to the ones walking into, it's the same apparatus. Yeah, exactly. All right, well, so much to think about and watch very carefully in the coming weeks. We do have other discussion topics that we want to get into, but Asa, you've been following the news from the UK. What can you tell us about what's been happening with Palestine Action and the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞 and all of that?
Yeah, thanks, Nora. Well, here in the UK last week, Palestine Action won a massive victory with 5 of their activists being released from jail after being acquitted by a jury of the most serious charges against them. The 6th activist remains on remand. Government prosecutors said on Saturday that they would seek a retrial after the jury failed to reach a verdict on some of the lesser charges. Nonetheless, the verdict is a massive blow to the British government's so-called terrorist ban against Palestine Action. Here's what the group of 6 did in August 2024. That was a video shot by Palestine Action, and that was one of the videos shown in the trial to the jury. And you can see in that footage the quadcopter drones that we've seen so many times, involved in killing people in Gaza. And also, as you saw there from that rolled up poster, that factory belongs to 𝐓𝐡𝐞, Israel's largest weapons maker. And drones such as those being smashed up by the activists in that footage have been regularly used by Israel to kill people, including children, in Gaza. There are 6 such remaining 𝐓𝐡𝐞 sites in the UK. There were 10, but Palestine Action's campaigns have forced 4 others to shut down. And most of the group of 6 openly admitted in court that they had been behind the smashing up of 𝐓𝐡𝐞's 𝐓𝐡𝐞 site. That's where that footage was from, near Bristol in the west of England. But the jury last week failed to convict any of them of criminal damage. There was a hung jury on those charges, and that's because enough of the jury agreed with the court argument of the defence that the damage they did to the arms factory was proportionate and reasonable, that is, carried out to prevent war crimes and genocide in the Gaza Strip. In all, there are 24 activists who are facing or have faced trials relating to the 2024 action, the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 24. This 𝐓𝐡𝐞 6 group were those arrested on site on the day itself. I wrote this report about the verdict last week, victory for Palestine Action as 𝐓𝐡𝐞 6 acquitted. So you can go and read that article here on screen, or that's the title, if you want to know more about the trial and the details of all the charges, as well as watch more videos. Since then, there's been several developments in the story. The Israel lobby, predictably, went into meltdown and demanded a retrial on some of the charges. Here's the Board of Deputies of British Jews, which in its own words has a, quote, close working relationship with the Israeli embassy and the Israeli military spokesperson's unit. They soon got their way, and the British government meekly complied. The Crown Prosecution Service put out a statement announcing via social media on Saturday that the CPS will seek a retrial in the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 Systems case, and that there will be a hearing to read the indictment next week on the 18th of February. Prosecutors are now considering the precise basis on which that retrial would proceed, including the form of the indictment. Palestine Action's co-founder, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐿, called this political theatre and pointed out that the defendants had already spent 18 months in prison without a single conviction. The government has subjected the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 24 to a trial by media and has tried to smear the activists as violent criminals. And this has been an especially important justification of the supposed terrorist ban that they imposed last summer, as we covered on this live stream. In the course of the trial, a lot of body cam footage was shown to the jury. A lot of CCTV footage also went mysteriously missing, and it seems USB sticks in evidence bags, police evidence bags, may have been handed over to 𝐓𝐡𝐞. Here's a couple of particularly important videos. Just watch the first one here. Apologies for the bad language. The man with the pixelated face screaming and brandishing a sledgehammer there was 𝐓𝐡𝐞 security guard Angelo Volante, and apologies for the bad language, as I said, but that was the reality of the situation. As you saw, if you're watching, acquitted defendants Fatima Zainab Rajwani and Charlotte Head held up their hands quietly and complied with police instructions and clearly posed no threat. Second video.
Get your fucking hands on now!
Apologies for the bad language once again. That was acquitted activist 𝐄𝐿 𝐄𝐿 being tasered by police. The group and its supporters say that police and security guards used excessive force and violence. Some of the security guards were ex-special forces and clearly looked to be up for a fight. While the group could possibly face retrial for the charges that the jury failed to find a majority verdict on, the six cannot be tried again on the most serious charge, aggravated burglary. That's because all six were acquitted on that charge, which could have led to life in prison. That's why the release of 5 out of this group of 6 was a massive blow to the British government's Israel lobby-backed campaign to ban Palestine Action as a so-called terrorist group. Remember that there's a current legal challenge to the ban before the High Court of England and Wales. As we've been reporting on this show since last year, Huda Omri's legal team is asking for what's known as a judicial review of the Home Secretary's decision to ban Palestine Action as supposed terrorist group. I explained on this show back in November how the British government and the pro-Israel lobby had been attempting to stitch up that case and preserve the ban. You can read that article of mine that was just shown there for all the details, or you can go to the article and scroll down to watch the full video segment from this live stream back in November last year when we went into the details. Nonetheless, the jury's decision to acquit the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿 will have made it very difficult for the judges to rule in the government's favour when it comes to maintaining the ban. A ruling that overturns the ban on Palestine Action would be unprecedented if it happens. The judgment is imminent and will be handed down. We just learned today it's going to be handed down tomorrow morning in London at the Royal Courts of Justice at 10 a.m. So, well, we'll be following those details as always and all those developments, and we'll bring it to you on the Electronic Intifada.
Amazing. Thank you so much for covering that and following those stories. And it's going to be interesting what the verdict is.
And Asa, it is extraordinary. What I understood, or what I understand, perhaps you could cast some more light on this. So these were 6 of the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 24. So 6 of the people who are being tried for involvement in this action. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the others, their charges relate to being, in a sense, accessories to the 6 who were just acquitted. So since they were acquitted and they're not guilty of anything, the rest can't really be accessories to anything. Is that, or is the prosecution going to come up with a creative way to try and stitch them up?
Yeah, that's essentially right. These 6 were those who were arrested at the site, and the rest are being, I suppose, accused of, helping to plan and whatnot. The accessories, as you said. Yes. So the answer is yes. Like they are to go forward with trials for them. They're going to be relying on the fact that there was a hung jury on some of the lesser charges. But what I understand from speaking to Palestine Action sources today is that the rest of the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 24 are now going to be, I remember these are people in jail. They've been on remand for 18 months. Well, not all of them on it for many, many months. The longest ones for 18 months. Some were arrested last year, some after the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿, but certainly for many months, and certainly over the normal 6-month limit. Even if they were found guilty of some of there wasn't a hung jury in their trials and the verdict went against them, likely they would only be facing time served, because the most serious charge has been acquitted. So it's highly, highly unlikely that they would be, found guilty of. I don't think they can be found guilty of that charge. It seems pretty much impossible. So that's what they'll be arguing in order to get bail. And I understand that's what the rest of the Filton 24's lawyers are going to be asking for imminently.
Well, it's extraordinary that the government has so far failed to convict a single person. And let's hope that continues. And it's hard to have faith in Western justice systems these days, but we will be waiting anxiously for the decision tomorrow. And I'm sure that if it doesn't go the way it should go, that there will be an appeal, but let's hope it does.
Yeah. A lot rides on it. Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking also about the use and abuse of legal protections for people speaking out about Palestine, we have an update. Ali wanted to talk about the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 case and what's happening with her this week.
Thanks, Nora. Yeah, a few weeks ago we spoke about 𝐓𝐡𝐞. She's the Palestinian woman who is the last person still held in U.S. federal detention in connection with protests at Columbia University. On March 13 last year, 𝐶ordea attended what she believed was a routine voluntary check-in at ICE headquarters in New Jersey, where she lives with her mother and brother. Instead, she was detained, transported to a detention facility in Texas, 1,500 miles away. And that's where she's been ever since for now close to a year. Now, Al Jazeera reports on the grave deterioration in her health and the ordeal she's being put through by ICE. Her family, according to Al Jazeera, were left in the dark when the 33-year-old was rushed from an immigration detention center in Texas to a nearby hospital late last week. For more than 12 hours, 𝐶ordea's family and legal representation said they were given no information about her whereabouts and condition. Her cousin, Hamza Abu Sha'ban, said the family was stonewalled as they searched for answers. Many people in her family thought she might have died, especially with the secrecy of her condition, Abu Sha'ban told Al Jazeera. Her family and her legal team confirmed on Tuesday that she has been released from the hospital. She suffered a seizure, but her family has only had fleeting contact with her since the medical emergency. Al Jazeera adds that the ordeal is the latest turn in 𝐶ordea's nearly year-long detention, which began when she was among several protesters targeted by immigration officials for taking part in pro-Palestine demonstrations at Columbia University in 2024. Personal losses helped inspire her protest. Nearly 200 members of her family have been killed in the genocide in Gaza. And Mondo Weiss is also reporting on 𝐓𝐡𝐞ordea's case. They say prior to her hospitalization, 𝐶ordea reported several symptoms, including a fever, dizziness, and brain fog, likely due to malnutrition. Again, her cousin, Hamza Abu Sha'ban, visiting from Dallas, met with 𝐶ordea alone on the prior Sunday and described her as malnourished and looking extremely sick. In an interview with Mondo Weiss, Abu Sha'ban said that his cousin's outspoken nature and advocacy for others have led to worse treatment over time. So she's being retaliated against by the prison authorities, according to her family who visited her. And her case is starting to get some more attention now. And we see Congresswoman Delia Ramirez speaking out in support of her. And she posted a video of 𝐓𝐡𝐞's cousin, Abu Sha'ban, speaking at a recent press conference. And you see that the Congresswoman tweeted about that. But the 𝐓𝐡 is still in detention and pressure is increasing. Voices are being raised, and I think we all have to raise our voices on her behalf that the Department of Homeland Security and ICE should release her. The only reason she's being held is for speaking out against genocide and exercising a First Amendment right that everybody in the United States enjoys, regardless of their immigration status. She is a political prisoner, and she deserves our full solidarity and support.
Just unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right. Well, we're going to keep following that. And as you said, thank you to Mondo Weiss for doggedly following that story. There's also repression that's continuing across Europe, of course. Ali, what's happening with Mohammed 𝐓𝐡𝐞?
Yeah, there's a lot of repression across Europe. Of course, we've talked about that, and we're going to talk about that well into the future. I think it's only going to intensify. But on February 7th, Greek authorities arrested Mohammed 𝐓𝐡𝐞, the Belgium-based Europe coordinator for the group 𝐓𝐡𝐞. He was detained at Heraklion Airport in Crete, where he was going to speak at a Palestine solidarity event. That's according to 𝐓𝐡𝐞. Now the group is reporting that on the morning of 11th February, so that's yesterday as we're speaking, the administrative court in Heraklion ordered Mohammed 𝐓𝐡𝐞 released from detention and to self-deport to Belgium in the coming days. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 says this is an important achievement for him, his lawyers, and the many groups supporting him, as it was clear that there was pressure to keep him detained indefinitely in Greece. So just another example of the rampant human rights abuses and repression of free speech across the European Union, which brands itself as the haven of civilized and democratic values.
Well, for some. Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Ali, I know we've been talking about over the last few months the Committee to Protect Journalists as one of these major international institutions that has been shown to be either, deliberately obfuscating facts about Israel's genocide on Gaza, or sweeping testimonies under the rug, or both. Give us an update on what's happening with CPJ. And I know you wrote an article about it. We just published it a few hours ago, and what it has to do with Human Rights Watch.
Yeah, well, thanks, Nora. Earlier this month, Omar Shakir stepped down from a senior role at Human Rights Watch after the group's suppression of a report describing Israel's denial of Palestinian refugee rights as a crime against humanity. I have lost my faith in the integrity of how we do our work and our commitment to principled reporting on the facts and application of the law, Omar Shakir wrote in his resignation letter, and that came after a decade as the Israel-Palestine director at Human Rights Watch. As such, I'm no longer able to represent or work for Human Rights Watch, Shakir added. Well, after that happened, whistleblowers at the Committee to Protect Journalists approached us and told us that they see something similar happening at the Committee to Protect Journalists, and that's what I reported on in the article we published today. Current and former staff say that their organization's CEO, Jody Ginsburg, did the exact same thing last August, albeit in a smarter, more concealed way to manage the anger of staff. According to the whistleblowers, Ginsburg decided to cancel CPJ's influential impunity index simply because the math showed Israel is number one. Quote, since the impunity index usually covers a time frame of 10 years, Israel would have been ranked near the top, if not number one, for many years to come. And basically, the impunity index is a tool that CPJ has been publishing since 2008, which ranks countries. Basically, the higher you are on the list, the worse you are for the murder of journalists and the impunity that the killers have. And so in 2024, Israel was number 2, just after Haiti, but that data only covered 2023, so the early months of the genocide. Well, if they had produced the impunity index in 2025, Israel would have been number 1 by a long distance, and it would have stayed there for years to come, as they noted. So the whistleblowers allege that Ginsburg, quote, simply couldn't afford the heat she would get every year from the board, the pro-Israel donors, and from Israel itself and its allies. And as Abu Bakr Abed reported for the Electronic Intifada in December, the same group of whistleblowers charged that on Ginsburg's instructions, CPJ had been downplaying the genocide in Gaza to appease pro-Israel donors. That's what you were referring to earlier, Nora.
Yeah.
And interestingly, CPJ's major funders include publications owned by right-wing pro-Israel media baron Rupert Murdoch. Its board is really a who's who of figures from mainstream pro-Israel outlets, including at least 5 members associated with the New York Times. Yes, that's the same New York Times that has been publishing atrocity propaganda about Gaza, that published the Jeffrey Gettleman rape hoax article that still hasn't been retracted. And 5 members of the CPJ board are closely tied, either current or former staffers at the New York Times. And another major donor to CPJ, this is something I managed to dig up, is Ariel Investments, a Chicago-based fund that invests in such companies as Checkpoint Technologies, an Israeli so-called cybersecurity firm headed by Nadav Zafrir. And if you're wondering who he is the founder of the Israeli military's cyber command, and a former commander of the notorious Unit 8200. That's the Israeli high-tech spying operation that collects information to use to blackmail and murder Palestinians. Our colleague David Cronin reported on Nadav Zafrir and how the European Union is actually funding him last November. Now, I'll just say that in its response to the Electronic Intifada, CPJ denied that it scrapped the impunity index in order to protect Israel. It also denied that donor considerations play into its editorial decisions. But you can read more about it in my article, which you can see there. The headline is CPJ scrapped impunity index to shield Israel, whistleblowers say.
Thank you for that. I don't know, what do we say about these institutions that defy the very basic fundamentals of what they profess to be all about?
It's another example of, everything has to be torn down to protect Israel.
That's it.
Free speech has to go. Justice has to go. Universities where you have academic freedom, that has to go. Yep. Everything has to be torn down. The UN has to go.
Yep.
All has to be torn down so that Israel can starve and murder babies in peace.
That's right. That's right.
I have one more very quick story from the UK, if I can. The Green Party, which it has 4 MPs in Parliament and is predicted to do well in an upcoming by-election. Before the members of the Green Party, there is a motion which has been posted online by Stats for Lefties, at Lefty Stats on Twitter, and at Greens for Palestine, and it's on all the usual Green Party forums. But it's A105, Zionism is racism, and before the Green Party conference, the members are going to vote on the Green Party declares itself to be an anti-Zionist party, and the Green Party rejects the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, calls for a one-state solution, so forth. It's been, I've read the full motion. It's very good in my view. I'm not a member of any political party, but this is something that I think Green Party members should definitely consider voting for, and it's already causing a bit of consternation by the Israel lobby, we could say. There is we've got a Daily Mail headline, I think, if tomorrow, if you've got that, that apparently, and also Stats for Lefties posted this, the motion, allegedly a member of the Green Party, Anonymous, has reported their own party to the anti-terror hotline. So yeah, it's kind of it's an unprecedented motion in terms of British party politics, and thanks to some of the details that are here on the screen of how Green Party members can vote for that.
Thanks for that, Asa. And then just finally, we've had her on the show before, Francesca Albanese, the Special Rapporteur for Human Rights for Occupied Palestine. She has faced economic sanctions as an individual for the last several months, I believe. But we have some additional information about her. And again, this goes back to repression, protecting Israel from any and all criticism or accountability or responsibility or punishment for the committing of war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide. So they're punishing Francesca with these very draconian financial measures. Ali, what do you know about that?
Well, the latest is that there is a full-blown campaign to try to get her to resign. The important thing is that she's not appointed by the political authorities at the UN. She is an independent UN rapporteur appointed. Her mandate comes from the UN Human Rights Council. So, Antonio Guterres or other puppets of the US empire and Israel can't just fire her. And that's been a problem because she's very outspoken, she's very well known, and she's really been quite uncompromising in some of the things she's been saying, especially recently. So what happened is she gave a speech at the Al Jazeera Forum in the last couple of weeks. It was by video. And Tamara, if you can show the first tweet that I gave you. This is a tweet that Francesca Albanese posted of her speech to the Al Jazeera Forum by video. It's about 4 minutes long. We don't need to play it now. But you can see she's responding there to a claim that is being put out by Israel and its lobby groups, that she said that Israel is the common enemy of humanity. And what she's saying here in her tweet is that what she said is the common enemy of humanity is the system that has enabled the genocide in Palestine. And if you listen to the speech, she does not say the words that Israel is the common enemy of humanity. But we know that Israel and its lobby groups are not interested in the truth. And so, Tamara, if you can show the second tweet that I just put up, that I just gave you. This is from Hillel Neuer. He is from an Israel lobby group called UN Watch that has been smearing the UN and UN officials and UNRWA for many, many years. He's behind a lot of the lies claiming that UNRWA schools are places where Hamas stores rockets and that sort of thing. And he's bragging in this tweet that is just literally minutes old that Austria, France and Germany have now called for Francesca Albanese to resign. That's not Francesca Albanese in the picture, that's the Austrian foreign minister. And in fact, earlier today, the government of France, the same one that claims to support a Palestinian state, called on Francesca Albanese to resign. So this is all about intensifying the demonization, the criminalization, the marginalization of anybody who criticizes Israel, which as a regime, as an entity committing genocide, is the common enemy of humanity.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, I hope, so far Francesca Albanese has stood firm in the face of the sanctions that make it so that, you can't basically conduct daily life, you can't travel, you can't do all sorts of things you have to do. The constant smears, the lies, the threats, she's stood firm this far, and I hope that Francesca Albanese will not ever bow to this thuggery. She must stand firm, and we should stand with her. And that goes true. I know it's like, I think she says a lot of fantastic things. I know there's people who sometimes disagree with her. That's not the point. We have the right to disagree with someone. That doesn't mean Israel lobby groups get to demonize and persecute them the way they are. That's why I think Francesca Albanese deserves our solidarity.
Yeah,
agreed.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Ali. Thanks, Asa. Thanks, John. Let's take a quick look at the website. Our colleague and our senior editor, Maureen Claire Murphy, just published Month in Pictures, which is always just a phenomenal, there it is, Palestine in Pictures for January, just a phenomenal roundup of not just images from around Palestine, but accompanied by a searing and critical news report as well. So
yeah, it's really an incredible resource for people who want to get a deep understanding of what's happening, who do not want to just, who are just, a lot of us, we're overwhelmed by everything flashing by on our phone, the speed of the news. This allows you to really get a big picture view of what has happened across Palestine over the past month. And with these incredible pictures, sometimes very difficult pictures to see, but I think there's no better way to get a deep insight into what's happening in Palestine. And all of these pictures are taken by Palestinian photojournalists. I mean, sometimes there are others in there, but all or most are taken by Palestinian photojournalists. So it's a way to really see and appreciate and share their work as well. So it takes Maureen a lot of time to put this together each month. It's extraordinary work. I think it's one of the best things we do every month. And so I really want people to take a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Palestine in Pictures for January. We have an incredible assortment of features, not just about Gaza and not just from Gaza, but all over Palestine, all over the world. A really incredible collection in the first, six stories there on our features page. So please go check that out. And of course, news and analysis and everything you can get is all at electronicintifada.net. I want to, of course, ask Ali if there's anyone that we should be thanking this week for supporting us.
No one to thank this week. We did it all by ourselves with
amazing.
No one.
Once again.
Of course. We are here thanks to the support of everyone watching, listening, reading. You are the ones who keep us going. You sustain us with your extraordinary moral support by sharing this work, by liking the videos on YouTube and other platforms, subscribing to the channel, following us on Twitter, on Instagram, all those things that help to spread the word. Those are things you do. And also many of you make donations, which is what allows us to fund all this work, to support our colleagues in Palestine, particularly in Gaza, and to do all the things you see here and read. So I'm just going to name and praise, not name and shame, name and praise just a very few of you who are there for us and who we so appreciate. And we're so grateful to you. So Raghida, Lamia, Richard, Julian, Yvonne, Sam, Catherine, Jacob, Eric, Douglas, Fiaz, Kathy, Amina, Celia, Jim, Nicole, and John. Thank you all so much for your support, and thanks to everyone else. And you'll remember that, was it back in December when we had our Q&A show at the end of the year, we promised everyone who made a donation that day or who sent us an email, we promised you'd get a sticker. I believe they've all been mailed out.
Excellent.
And thanks to our volunteers who helped us with that, because it was a big job. We still are going to be sending out the We Are Not Numbers books. Those have not gone out yet. Be patient, and they'll come to to the people we select. They'll be drawn randomly. But if you got your stickers already, say so in the comments. I want to know that you got them, that they came through in the mail. And thanks very much.
That's fantastic. Wonderful. Well, I want to thank everyone. Oh, there's John with his sticker. Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. And I want to thank everyone who works at the Electronic Intifada, of course, everyone who's donated to the Electronic Intifada. I want to especially thank Tamara Nassar for directing and producing this program, Eli Gerzon for social media production, Pierre for radio production, everyone at the Electronic Intifada. On behalf of Tamara, Ali, John, and Asa, thank you all. And we'll see you not next week, but the week after on February 26th. So thank you all, and we'll see you then.